Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you all for coming here to be here for our closing session. It's been a very full couple of days with some really powerful and intense conversations. And a lot of important things have surfaced in the conversations coming out of your experience and the experience of your colleagues over these last few days. In Ignatian spirituality and in the spiritual exercises, the most common exercise in that 30-day retreat experience is something called the repetitio. It's a time when Ignatius invites the retreatant to go back to a meditation already undertaken, to review some of the points from that reality and to seek to drink them in more deeply, to come to a deeper, heartfelt appreciation of what was moving in that earlier prayer experience, trusting that the Spirit of God is at work in that and will illuminate it ever more deeply. This afternoon's exercise, or this afternoon's gathering, is really something in the spirit of a repetitio, an opportunity to go back and revisit some of the things that we may have heard or spoken of over these last 3 days, to drink them in more deeply, to absorb them and assimilate them and learn from them in order to come to enter into some conversation and reflection about where do we go from here. To put this in the common language of the Ignatian pedagogical paradigm, which many of you are familiar with, we've had a context of these days. We've experienced a great deal. Now it's an opportunity to reflect on that experience, to deepen it, and to figure out what we want to do, to make decisions about our common future together, and how to support one another in being the kind of place that we want to be. So that's the spirit in which I invite you into this closing session of these days, these conversations on hospitality. And at this point, I will turn it over to Rabbi A.B. Ingber to take us into that experience of repetitio, of deepening, of absorbing more deeply the insights, the important points from these past few days.
I say it all the time. I have had the gift of a charmed life. We had a difficult session this morning. Not difficult because it was without hope, but difficult because we had to go through this in order to begin to identify where our hope and our potential can come. And, now we've got a lunch meeting. But that lunch meeting was with your bishop. I shared earlier somebody that I met in South Dakota when he was the bishop there, and I was privileged to show our exhibit about Pope John Paul II and the Jewish people. And just to see him in his collar, and to know that I'm in the Jesuit residence here in a town I've never ever been to, and here's a friend that our paths just happened to cross. And to the point of laughing because of his heritage and my heritage. There were 2 soups at the Jesuit house today. One was Polish cold beet soup, or Russian, Eastern European cold beet soup, called borscht or barscht, and chicken noodle soup. And I had his Polish cold beet soup, and he had chicken noodle soup, and this was not set up. But what a just a delight it has been to be here. I think Delta will have to more than upgrade me just to first class to contain the emotions and that which has been banging around in my head for these last 3 days. I'm looking forward to unpacking this here for me, and to God willing, take some of this journey that you have allowed me to witness and to help my own school to begin its process of journeying in a similar kind of way. I know of no other place that has done what you have done these last 2 days. Seriously, I don't know of another place. You can walk away from it, you'll still be the only place that will have done it, but who cares? But if we try to capture this, if we try to move to that hopefulness, if we try to create that hospitality that really will embrace, then I think you not only can be celebrated for what you have begun, but you will be enriched, and those students who will come here for a generation will be thankful for the journey that we began. And so those words come really because I'm feeling a little emotional about taking my leave from your absolutely physically beautiful and engaging campus. Jim and I were thinking maybe some almost 300 different folks have come through these sessions. And I look and there's names that I know, there certainly are faces that I know. It's really wonderful, I think, and healing. But I do want to share just a quick 2-minute video for no reason other than the fact that I like it. I like it, it's gentle, it's a little inspiring to me, and every night I try to get into bed sometime before midnight so that I can catch a little bit of National Public Radio's echoes, and I want to hear world new music and to be touched by things that I have no idea what I'm listening to, and then to roll into the BBC. So I fall asleep to the BBC, so you shouldn't be too surprised if I miss it. You're having a bad day? Turn that up loud. What we're going to try to do, as Jim mentioned, is just for a short period of time together, to engage in that return to a moment in these last few days, to what hopefully is a learning moment, and to even look at some concrete steps that we might take. For some of you, it may be the look of the office and how it doesn't invite. For others, it may be the administrative embrace of a policy, of a new religious leave policy for staff, for students. Our technology staff might help us to put the major holiday festivals on our portal as Gonzaga's first face forward to the community. Or faculty and staff, or intra-faculty and staff may begin to name some conversations that could heal. Or in an example of an embrace of diversity, we might not only look to diversity, but look to those who get diversity to move us forward. But of everything that we might do in our professional lives here at Gonzaga, we already know that we must begin this with a reflection on who we are and who we want to be and how we might yet get there. I've said probably 5 times that the culture of this great university resides in the people in this room. If you want that culture to shine and illumine the path for the student generations who are yet to come here, you will need to embrace that change yourself first. From a then place of calm, from a place of awareness of what a wonderful world this could be, especially if you had David Attenborough's accent, I invite you to share a moment from our time together, and to share that moment in the way that you recall it, and perhaps in calling it by name, you could paint that for us as well. And those little reflections on some opportunity of learning, some point that touched you perhaps, that opened up a tiny window to that which is inside. My able medieval scribe here, because the Bluetooth was not present, will come up and just throw some of those things on our overhead. So you don't have to share some moment, but if there was a moment that you can draw up, wonderful to have you share. Quill ready?
It was ready.
Anybody? Oh, yes, thank you.
The phrase at the very beginning that struck me and it's kind of kept with me throughout all of the things is you need to get beyond a tolerance of diversity to a celebration. And I think a lot of what I heard throughout the sessions that I attended was that when we feel like we're marginalized or other, it's because even just tolerance isn't enough. That we really want others to not just put up with us, but really let us into it.
We will need a few pictures, otherwise he doesn't get paid.
I would second something that was said in the last session about how useful the conversation on wounds was and how we really just scratched the surface. If there's something that we could go back to and spend more time on, is the wounds and how do we heal.
Right. You know, and by no means this is need to be I said. You heard it, paint the in or out of the picture makes no difference. I want to celebrate what you heard, so thank you.
I thought one of the valuable points from our discussion yesterday afternoon with the student development staff was when our student involvement and leadership director asked the question about students who are living one set of values Monday through Thursday and another set of values Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and helping.
Just to correct that, they said Monday to Friday, and another set of values Saturday and Sunday, and I said, Monday to Thursday.
Yeah.
I want to correct that record.
But I caught the correction.
Okay.
That's it.
Very good.
But I thought it was important as we talked and transitioned from that's a student issue to, well, how are we living Monday through Thursday? Are we living Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 versus evenings and weekends? And what are we role modeling? How will we apply that to our own lives?
True. Thank you.
In our discussions this morning, we talked about culture, and I had the insight that there are many different cultures on our campus, that we talk about staff and faculty having different cultures, but even within faculty, for example, there are different disciplinary cultures, and that contributes to the sense of other. And one of the things that we try to get our students to do is to develop this intercultural competence. And we have programs and ways of doing that and ways of describing different levels of that. And yet we don't seem to apply that within our own, among our own cultures here. And I'm wondering if there are ways that we can think about intentional ways to, you know, how do you encounter a different culture and begin to move to the point where you can celebrate it? Can we approach the cultural differences on campus that way?
In the breakout session, the first day, some of the individuals who I was privileged to participate in the discussion and really went to some vulnerable places and really spoke, I think, eloquently and courageously about some difficult things and experiences, and creating a place where that voice can be heard and acknowledged and help generate discussions. How do we do that?
I feel compelled just to say that what you saw in your session, I'm telling you, all week long. I mean, all week long. And what I believe was true for everybody was that the Hebrew expression is Dvarim hayotzim min halev nichnasim lalev. Words that come from the heart enter easily into the heart. But, and you offer this, that they will have been in vain. All that sharing from the heart will have been in vain if we don't take these moments and move further to be able to integrate them. So, thanks. I'm not done with this side, but yeah, we'll jump there.
This morning in our discussion of leadership and hospitality, one of the statements that really moved me was that we would ask the question, what kind of leadership does this person need? And as a leader, to try to discern that and be that kind of leader for that person, because we're all so very different.
The quote you gave this morning, I think that if we dream alone, we just dream. If we dream together, we can affect reality. I think that's the challenge coming out of this. We've all kind of dreamt alone and then a bit together, but how do we broaden that together in the university?
You know, we're taught, be careful who you sleep with. I just heard a Jesuit priest say, let's dream together. So, I mean, really, I'm still careful about who I sleep with, and I have to figure out how to dream together, but I think we can dream together. I think we totally can dream together.
I really think, I think faculty and staff need to dream together.
Okay, all right, let's separate students. All right, we're joking now, but it's so real, and remember A.B. Ingber said that, John Lennon borrowed it from me. Somewhere here.
In the reporting back session this afternoon on healing, we spent a good amount of time hearing ways in which people at the university have been hurt. Sometimes, how do I put this? fences that go back a long ways, ways in which maybe they've been a bit dehumanized. And then you shared your amazing story about that young German girl that you met at Auschwitz. And I was thinking about how in a place of such unspeakably dehumanizing violence, you could find some degree of reconciliation and compassion for each other. My first thought was, well, our complaining seems a little bit trivial in comparison, but I don't think that's the message at all. I think the message is that if you could find healing and reconciliation in a situation like that, in a place that symbolizes such evil, well, we're foolish not to have hope, that we can find something like that in a place like this.
I think what my takeaway for myself was, I didn't think I had any choice but that something in how my life had prepared me for that moment, which I didn't know was happening, said, Ingber, you don't have a choice. You can't turn away, walk away, or be uncivil. You, for some reason, have to embrace. And I mean, for me, that was as simple as it could be, but I can't tell you exactly where it came from. I can tell you the players, I can tell you when I was born, I can't tell you when I'm gonna die, but it's gonna happen. But somewhere in that continuum, I had no choice but to act in arguably the way a spirit, that hand of God, asked me at that moment. So, thank you. Yep.
This morning we talked about characteristics of an effective leader, and our group was brainstorming characteristics, and I like to watch what people do. Like, we talk about leadership and what leaders say and what the visions people have, but I also like to watch what people do. And while we were talking about leadership, there was an actual model of listening. And in fact, I don't want to embarrass you, Michelle Wheatley, but she was listening to everyone in that room, and within 20 minutes, 6 people felt that they were heard and listened to. And I thought, what a wonderful example of leadership in action, that if we could have taped it, everyone could have seen that we were being listened to, and Michelle got it, how to listen. She was showing us this is what listening is, but she didn't tell us what listening was. She didn't say, this is how you have to listen to be a good leader. She was just doing it, and I appreciated that I could see this model, and I could see this in action, and I just want to thank you for that, Michelle. I appreciate that.
And thank you for naming it. I basically just said the same thing to her just before we walked in. So, thank you. We're up here. Thank you.
I was surprised in the small group session that I attended this morning to hear that there is what I would describe at least a troubling, not significant amount of fear and distrust on campus. I want this series of conversations that have occurred to come to grips with that, and for something to happen to make that, well, to resolve those issues, to make it a safe, comfortable place where we feel valued and where there's no sense of, uncertainty as to what's out there in the future for us as an institution or as employees.
I mean, we have to. We have to. I mean, I want to resist commenting because our wine will be either warm or cold, which is the wrong thing, and the cheese will be, forget it. So we want to get there. But other voices, please, please, please.
I recall in the opening, one of the things that you said, Rabbi, was that if you're not here for the students, then you're in the wrong place. And listening to even some of the comments, it strikes me, as we've gone through some of these sessions, that if we think about what it is we expect our students to take away from their experience as part of this Gondaya community. It's an awfully great starting point for how we ought to be treating one another and what we should be aspiring to ourselves.
I like the fact that as you're offering some words, your faces are totally recalling where you were and how it was happening. So it's excellent reflection. Anybody else? A few other comments, perhaps? Yep.
The faculty staff divide has come up a lot today, but in a session this morning that was a mix of faculty and staff on the staff member, I shared a story and experience. And a person that I don't know, I think I maybe communicated with her on email a few times, was sitting across from me, and she leaned forward and she said, "I know what you mean." And so I think when we have an opportunity to connect in this way, there is no divide. It's a constructive divide that we each have some responsibility for, and so it was a delightful.
In this morning's session, we were talking, faculty and staff talking about leadership, but what we ended up talking about also was how people have been hurt by poor leadership or by ineffectual leadership, allowing kind of problematic relations to happen. And at one point I shared something, you know, having been here like 27 years, one faculty member said, well, I think it's, you know, this is the situation right now. I imagine it was much better years ago. And I said, no, it was maybe worse years ago. It's actually gotten a little better. And I described an experience I had my first year here in 1987. That's not so much the point as when we left the room, he put his arm on my shoulder and said, "I'm sorry that happened." And so that was a much younger colleague. And I realized as I walked away, that meant quite a bit.
Anybody else? Okay. What I would ask you now to permit in your involvement, we began at the beginning with a line game and I blew tape down the middle of this room. We're not going back there. I want you perhaps to consider doing something that is in writing for yourself, with the possibility of sharing little pieces of it. So you've got it, Jim. Old school, you might need a writing implement. Now, what this is, this comes from Aaron Joel again, and 150 kids in Wilson High School in Long Beach, California. This was the rubric for a change poem. And you'll see there's 3 sections in it. First one I remember, I heard, I saw a word, I thought, and then a exclamation, if you like, but I want to change. The second part, I am, I think, I need, I try, I feel, I forgive, and the declaration, again, now I can change. And then that third part, I will, I choose, our future casting, and with a final proclamation, I will change. I'm not asking you to fill out every line, but if you would, at least consider filling out a few lines in each section. And then, when we've given you some time to do that, if you care to share, I'm just gonna ask you if you would share one line from that first section and end it with, "but I want to change." One line or phrase from the second section and end it with, "now I can change." And one line from the third section, "I will change." Hopefully this will be of some value to you, even as you take it on. So take a few minutes to do that. So again, for those of you willing to share something, first phrase, first section, a phrase, end it with, "but I want to change," then go right into the second section, "now I can change," and then bring it home and tell us, "I will change." Anyone that, in there that you'd like. And if you offer two, that's fine too. So we want to start? We're starting. No?
I'll start one, maybe.
Thank
I'm not
you.
sure if I have this right, but I thought the first part, my gifts weren't good enough to share, but I want to change.
And then second, give me something from the second part.
That I need to remind myself that the best way to say thank you for a gift is to do something wonderful with it.
Now I can change, and then something from the third section.
That I want to share what I know as well and creatively as possible.
I will change. So almost kind of a three-part mantra. Thank you. Thanks for starting it. Someone else?
I heard judgment, I try to practice forgiveness, I choose to react differently.
Good. We're almost there. So first thing, and add to it, "but I want to change." Second thing, add to it, "now I can change." Third thing, "I will change." If you've ever been in church, it's called, like, where everybody comes together and sings the Lord. So perfect. Next person. Now I want to get a lot of them. Yeah, thank you.
I was uncertain. I heard I wasn't good enough. I worried my ideas would not be valued, but I want to change. I am confident, experienced, respected. I think there is important work to do. I try to see who you are, not who I think you are. I forgive myself. Now I can change. I will be open and non-judgmental. I hope to make a lasting difference. I will change.
Thank you.
I was new to the university systems, processes, and culture, and was in an observing stage. But I want to change. I'm taking control of my learning and what I need to succeed so that I can now change into somebody who knows somebody who is a go-to person, who has ownership over the position, the department, learning, and can create a better place for my colleagues.
I will change. Thank you.
I saw the look of pain on the face of someone I cared about, but I want to change. I need to accept forgiveness. Now I can change. I know now what I did not know before. I will change.
Last couple, anybody willing to share?
Before we close to go and celebrate with some wine and cheese, I would like to say thank you to all of you who have invested your time and energy and your hearts in being a part of these days and these conversations. As A.B. has underscored so well and so truly, if we want to make change, we have to do it. We have to take the steps that we can that are within our grasp. These conversations have been a starting point, not an end point. And the Office of Mission is certainly committed to supporting the ongoing transformation of this campus in line with the best of who we can be. But it also takes initiative from you. And so if there are ways that you would like to be supported in helping to bring about further conversations in your own contexts, then let's work together and make that happen. Before we close, I think it's really important to say a few words of thanks. And first and foremost, to all of you for investing all of this time and energy. But we also need to thank the deans of this university and the staff assembly who have contributed so generously to making it possible to bring A.B. here, and of course to the Office of Mission, without whom it would not have been possible. And so thank you, Father Case, Frank. And last but certainly not least, to A.B. for sharing his heart and his vision and his hope, and providing us with an opportunity in his presence to talk to one another about things that matter so deeply. Thank you.
Sister Judy Tenzing, a wonderful sister from Notre Dame de Namur, a brilliant order. I am probably the only rabbi on the face of this earth that actually read a book about a history of that order, its origin. Somebody gives me a book and writes in it, I'm reading it. She went in her really compassionate faith and ministry to establish a restaurant in Cincinnati called Venice on Vine. For people who are out of the prison system or have been really so deprecated in the community that there was no possibilities for them. And they would come into this pizza parlor, and with promises from them to renounce this, that, and the other, and that they are drug-free, etc., she would give them not just employ, but she would help them learn a livelihood, whether that be washing dishes or sous chef or making pizza or running and helping to run the books in the administration of Venice on Vine. And it's been incredibly successful. Small start, and now business people in the downtown area go to Venice on Vine because they love the pizza and they love where the money happens to go to. And Sister Judy was famously asked, how do you change so many hearts? And her answer was simple. First, I love them. Thank you.
I invite you all to join together for further conversation in the lounge on the second floor where we have wine and cheese available.